the emergency room was filled with chaos. Sirens blare as Emeka, a young football star, was rushed through the doors. His body was battered, and his face was so severely injured that it was hard to recognize him. Friends, teammates, and coaches crowded the hospital halls, each filled with fear and confusion. The doctors moved quickly, trying to save him, but the heart monitor's constant flatline told them the truth: Emeka was gone. But how did it come to this? Months earlier, Emeka had been the shining star of Bayside College. He was the football team captain, known for his tall, athletic build and natural talent on the field. At just 22 years old, he was already called a future football star. His team admired him, his classmates looked up to him, and his coaches saw him as the key to their success. Emeka had it all, a bright future ahead of him. Emeka had one rule: no distractions. While many girls on campus tried to get his attention, he stayed focused. He balanced his schoolwork with his love for the game and worked hard to stay ahead. Emeka didn't let anything get in his way. Football and his studies were his top priorities. But even the most focused can face obstacles. Jason, the second best player on the team, was one of those obstacles. He was strong, determined, and always in Emeka's shadow. No matter how hard Jason tried, he was considered second to Emeka. Jason had worked hard to get where he was, but Emeka's talent seemed effortless. Jason didn't like that. He didn't like being second, and he didn't enjoy watching Emeka take all the attention. The jealousy built up slowly. Jason had been on the team for years, but Emeka always got the credit. Whenever Emeka made an incredible play, the crowd cheered his name. Whenever Jason made a great play, it barely got noticed. Jason couldn't understand why Emeka had everything he wanted. It wasn't just about football, it was everything. Emeka had the respect of his teammates, the admiration of his professors, and even the girls' attention on campus. Jason had none of that. It wasn't fair, Jason thought. He worked just as hard as Emeka, maybe harder, but Emeka always stood at the top. Jason began to resent him for it. He wasn't just frustrated by Emeka's success, he was angry. He wanted Emeka out of the way, so Jason could finally get the recognition he deserved. But Jason didn't show his anger. He kept it hidden behind a mask of friendship. On the surface, he was Emeka's teammate, his ally, but inside, he wanted something more: to be the one everyone noticed. While Jason's resentment grew, Emeka stayed focused on his goal. He didn't realize that someone so close to him was beginning to plot against him. He had no idea that his success had made him a target. He believed that nothing could stand in his way if he just kept working hard. Little did he know, that was about to change. The night everything went wrong, Emeka's life was changed forever. The story of how he ended up in the emergency room, bruised, broken, and lifeless, was only beginning. And as the doctors fought to save him, his teammates and friends could only wonder, how did it all go so wrong? Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell, so you never miss a new story. Your support truly means the world to us. Then came Lena. She wasn't like the other girls at Bayside College. Yes, she was beautiful, but something more about her made Emeka think about her long after they first met. Lena had an energy about her that was impossible to ignore. She was charming, intelligent, and funny. When they bumped into each other on campus, their first conversation felt like it was meant to happen. It was like fate had brought them together. The connection was instant, and Emeka couldn't shake the feeling that they were supposed to meet. For the first time, Emeka felt like he could let his guard down. He was used to staying focused on football, keeping his emotions and attention in check. But Lena made him feel different. She was easy to talk to, and they shared many interests: books, movies, music. It didn't take long for Emeka to start thinking about her constantly, something he'd never allowed himself to do before. He was falling for her fast, and he couldn't stop it. Their romance moved quickly. They went on walks around campus, had late-night conversations about their dreams, and shared special moments. Emeka's friends started noticing the change in him. They saw him spending more time with Lena and less time on his football practices. He started skipping extra workouts and missing team meetings. His usual dedication to football began to slip, and everyone could see it. But Emeka didn't care. He was in love, and love had a way of making everything else seem less important. To Emeka, Lena was perfect. She was kind and sweet and always made him feel good about himself. He couldn't understand why anyone would be anything but happy for him. His friends raised their eyebrows when he talked about her, but they didn't say much. They didn't want to interfere, but they couldn't help but notice that Emeka wasn't acting like himself. He was distracted, and his focus, once so sharp, was now fogged by his feelings for Lena. But Emeka didn't see the subtle signs that should have warned him. Lena, despite her perfect smile and warm presence, was hiding things. She would disappear for hours without an apparent reason, and when Emeka asked about it, she would smile and brush it off, telling him she was busy with schoolwork or meeting friends. Sometimes, when Emeka would visit her, he noticed she would quickly hide her phone, or her eyes would flick nervously to the door. There were moments when she would glance at her phone with a look that Emeka couldn't quite place, a look that seemed like she was waiting for something, someone. And the people Lena would meet on campus, the ones Emeka didn't recognize, seemed to make her uneasy. She would quickly pull him away from them, laughing awkwardly, saying it was nothing. But Emeka didn't question her. He trusted her completely. He was in love, and love made him blind to everything else. He didn't see that Lena's behavior was starting to change. Her texts became less frequent, and when they did talk, she seemed distracted. But Emeka brushed it off, telling himself it was because she had her own life outside of him. He couldn't see the bigger picture, the things slowly slipping away from him. Amid his growing love for Lena, Emeka didn't realize that someone else was starting to take notice. Someone who had been lurking in the shadows and had his reasons for wanting to keep Emeka off balance. But that, too, was something Emeka couldn't see yet. For now, he was caught up in his relationship with Lena, believing everything was perfect. But the signs of trouble were there, and they were getting harder to ignore. One evening, Lena invited Emeka to a remote spot on the edge of campus. She said she had a surprise for him, and that alone was enough to spark his curiosity. Emeka, ever trusting, followed without question, eager to see what she had in mind. He had always admired Lena's sense of mystery, how she could make any moment feel special, even when the two of them were sitting quietly. The evening air was still, thick with the scent of damp grass. The campus lights were dim in the distance, casting long shadows over the path. Emeka noticed how peaceful everything felt, as if the world had paused just for them. A soft breeze ruffled his hair as he and Lena made their way toward a small hill on the outskirts of campus. It was a place they had visited before, though never in the dark. Once they reached the top, Lena asked him to sit beside her. "Look at the stars," she whispered, her voice soft but filled with an excitement that made him smile. Emeka leaned back on the cool grass, staring up at the sky. They sat together, talking and laughing, letting the quiet of the night fill the spaces between their words. Emeka found himself forgetting the world outside of this moment. It was easy to get lost in Lena's company, easy to think that everything would always be this simple. There was no rush, no tension, just the two of them enjoying the calm. But the calm didn't last. From the darkness, shadows slowly began to shift. At first, Emeka didn't notice them, his attention still on Lena's soft laugh. But then the hairs on his neck stood up, a sudden cold creeping over him. He looked over at her, sensing something was wrong. Lena had gone quiet. Her eyes were wide, fixed on something behind him. He turned to see a group of boys emerging from the shadows. They were cloaked in darkness, their faces hidden behind masks. At first, Emeka thought it was some sort of prank. Maybe they were friends of Lena's, part of a twisted joke he wasn't in on. He chuckled nervously, but when one of the boys stepped forward and swung a fist at him, the laughter died in his throat. The punch landed hard against his chest, knocking the breath out of him. His confusion quickly turned to fear, but he had no time to process it. The boys closed in on him, their hands and feet connecting with his body with brutal force. The shock of it made his legs buckle beneath him. His mind screamed in protest as they focused their attack on his legs, which had made him a star on the field. Every blow was a reminder that his speed and strength could be taken from him instantly. His body burned with pain, but what hurt more was the sense of helplessness, the realization that no one was coming to save him. He tried to fight back, pushing against the hands that grabbed at him, but it was useless. And then, in the middle of the turmoil, one of the masked figures struck him across the head. The blow came so suddenly, so forcefully, that it sent his vision spiraling. His body went limp as the world around him blurred. The last thing he remembered before collapsing onto the ground was the sight of Lena standing motionless, her eyes locked on the scene before her, her face pale and full of horror. But still, she said nothing. She didn't scream. She didn't call for help. It wasn't until the boys had disappeared into the darkness, their laughter fading away with the night, that Lena moved. She dropped to her knees beside him, her hands trembling as she tried to wake him. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. At the hospital, Lena played the role of the terrified girlfriend with practiced ease. Her sobs were loud, desperate, and convincing enough to fool the doctors and even Emeka's closest friends. They surrounded her, offering comfort and sympathy as they tried to process the chaos that had unfolded. Lena's shaking hands, her teary eyes, and the trembling voice all fit the part she was playing. Emeka's friends didn't question it. After all, who would think to suspect the girlfriend of being anything other than devastated by the attack? But not Detective Harris. He was used to reading people and noticing the small things others missed. As he observed Lena from across the room, something about her story didn't sit right. Her sobs were too controlled, too rehearsed. The way she spoke, as if she had practiced every word, gave off a sense of calculation. And then there were her eyes, empty, lacking the real fear and grief one would expect from someone whose loved one had just been brutally attacked. The detective had learned to trust his instincts, and everything in his gut told him there was more to this than what met the eye. As the investigation deepened, Harris began to dig into Lena's past, piecing together the details that didn't quite add up. Surveillance footage became a key part of the puzzle. Cameras on campus had captured Lena leading Emeka to the remote spot by the hill, where the attack had taken place. When the footage was shown to Emeka's friends, their expressions turned from concern to suspicion. Why had she been there with him in the first place? And why had she chosen that spot? But Lena's acting remained flawless: tears, sobs, and an outpouring of regret whenever anyone questioned her. As Harris dug deeper, phone records revealed a connection between Lena and one of the attackers. A phone number matched one traced back to one of the masked boys from the ambush. The link was undeniable. Lena had been in contact with them before the attack. It was clear now that this wasn't just some random act of violence, it was planned. Things took a darker turn when one of the boys, racked with guilt, slipped up during questioning. His conscience couldn't take the weight of the crime anymore. He confessed that Lena had been the one to direct the entire plan. She had called the shots and directed them to where Emeka would be most vulnerable. She was the one who had led him into the trap. When Lena was finally confronted with the growing mountain of evidence, her facade cracked. Her hands shook, and the tears came, but there was no acting this time. She could no longer hide the truth. Her sobs were different now, genuine but filled with regret. Through her tears, she confessed the shocking truth. She was never Emeka's girlfriend, not in the way everyone thought. The connection between them had been a lie. She had only pretended to be close to him, to get close to him. The real truth was far darker. Lena had been Jason's girlfriend, Jason, the envious teammate who had always felt overshadowed by Emeka's talent and success. Jason had been the one to direct the entire plan, hire the boys, and ensure Emeka would be hurt badly enough to lose his spot as team captain. Jason was the mastermind, and Lena had been his willing accomplice. But somewhere in the chaos, the plan had spiraled out of control. The attackers had gone too far, striking Emeka in ways that they hadn't intended. And now, Emeka was gone, lying in a hospital bed, his future uncertain. As Lena broke down, confessing the truth, Harris felt a bitter satisfaction. He had known that the truth wasn't as simple as it seemed. But it didn't stop the anger that surged through him. This wasn't just a case of betrayal, it was a betrayal that had nearly cost someone their life. The arrests came swiftly. Jason, Lena, and the others who had attacked Emeka were taken into custody. The police acted fast, and soon enough, the truth was out. They were charged with murder. It was hard to believe that the people who had once seemed so normal, even friendly, could have been behind something terrible. The trial didn't take long. In court, all the details of their betrayal were revealed. The plan they had worked on together, right down to the violent beating they meant to give Emeka to end his football career, was laid out for everyone to hear. But what no one had expected was that it had gone too far. They hadn't planned for Emeka to end up fighting for his life. Jason's ambition had been his driving force. He wanted to be the best. He wanted to be the team star, the one everyone talked about. But his jealousy had closed his eyes to everything else. His need to destroy Emeka, to bring him down, had cost him more than a football title. It had taken a life. Emeka's life wasn't over yet, but he had been left broken, physically and emotionally, all because of Jason's twisted vision of success. When the court announced their sentences, there was no happiness, no relief. Jason, Lena, and the others were sentenced to years behind bars. Their futures, once full of promise, were now shattered by a moment of jealousy and violence. All of them would pay the price for what they had done, for the lives they had ruined. Back at Bayside College, things slowly began to heal. Emeka's teammates, friends, and even the staff mourned the loss of someone so talented and kind. But even as time passed, his legacy lived on. The school decided to retire his jersey. His number was no longer just a number, it was a symbol. A symbol of integrity, hard work, and the kind of person Emeka had been. His name was etched into the history of the college, a reminder that the true measure of a person wasn't just in what they could do on the field, but in how they lived their life off it. Meanwhile, in a cold, dark prison cell, Jason sat alone. His mind was full of regret and questions he would never be able to answer. How had it all gone so wrong? He had been so close to winning and getting what he thought he deserved. But in the end, his victory had come at a cost so high that it could never be justified. He had lost everything, his future, his freedom, and the respect of everyone who had once looked up to him.